Hi everyone, Dr. Krisha here. I'm so excited for this webinar. We are on webinar 6, I believe, the Summer of Health series. And this last week we talked about movement. This week we're talking about movement again. And I am so very excited because this week I have Ethan Childs here, the wonderful fitness trainer guru. And he's going to teach us all about what we're going to talk to you all about, how movement is so incredibly important, but actually what you can do about it. So more about moving forward and taking action. Last week I really just talked about the why and all of the many benefits, but now we actually get to learn how to do it. So with that, let me introduce Ethan Childs. Again, he's a fitness trainer at RDfit here in Portland. And he's been in the fitness industry now for 3 years. He has an absolutely amazing story. I think we've known each other for about a year now. And he shared, his why, like how he got into fitness. And I want to just let you go ahead and take it from there. Ethan, tell us how, you got into fitness and why it's so important for you.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start by how like health in general has kind of like impacted my life. And so when I was really young, my dad was always very, very health conscious. And so he was, I would say, misled though, because he kind of came from that era of like fat free and like, and he was kind of the type of person to like hop on the bandwagon with everything. And so like we always, like growing up, like never had any milk. We had like rice milk. We never had any butter. We had like, can't believe it's not butter. So health was always talked about around my house growing up. And then and I never really thought anything of it as a kid until when I was about 9 years old. I was diagnosed with leukemia. And so I was impacted pretty hard with being sick. And so at a really young age, I kind of realized how impactful, how important your health really is. And so going through that kind of like made me realize like that, like how important it is to really take care of yourself. And so even though it wasn't like anything I did or like anything like the way I lived was like bad, I realized that like I need to take care of myself just so, I can basically like be better prepared if anything does happen like that. And like, again, later on in my life, as I grew up, I was living in California originally, and then I moved up here, and I was in sports. I did a lot of martial arts, and then I got into something called Project Fit Kid. It was basically like this gym, which was RDfit, which is where I work now, which is pretty cool. They had this kind of camp type thing that was called Project Fit Kid. And so it's where like a group of trainers, there's about 3 trainers, and you'd see each one each time in the week. And you'd go and basically do sort of like a fitness class. Well, I went, and originally it was me and 2 other kids. And then slowly but surely, within like probably about 2 or 3 months, those kids dropped out. And then it was just me. And so I was lucky enough, very fortunate enough to get personal training at a really young age. I was probably about 14 years old. And so I was basically getting personal training from a few trainers for about, I started at 14. I basically stopped when I was 18, so about 4 years. And as I was going through it, there was like one main trainer that was actually kind of taking me through it. And so in that, they would teach me principles and stuff, but weren't really, like as a trainer, we tried not to like go too deep into the science of it, but I was so fascinated by it. Like being in high school, I was just like asking every little question of like, why are we doing this? Like, what is this doing for me? Like, why should I be doing this? Like, everyone in high school is like lifting weights. Why aren't we like, benching and squatting every day? And so, and it just kind of got me a lot more fascinated by the science of it and like why we should move. And And then in the process, you know, seeing results and feeling the results. So like not only like seeing the aesthetic change of my body, but like being able to feel how much better I can move. And also one thing I've kind of come to realize even more recently is like your mind muscle connection is kind of amazing. So like once you really learn to move your body properly, having that connection is pretty astounding. And so that's basically the gist of my story. And so, and then as I was getting um, into all this, I kind of realized I wanted to do something in the health, like in the healthcare or health and fitness industry. And so I became a personal trainer. And in doing so, I love fitness and I love movement. And I realized, you know, you can only do so much there. So I became a health coach, and then got certified as a nutrition coach. So I do a lot of like nutrition counseling with people as well. And just realizing like how much good quality nutrition and good quality movement can change someone's life drastically.
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
yeah. So now I'm on a mission to help as many people as I can get healthy.
Love it, love it. We're aligned. So
Yeah.
my people. That is just so wonderful. I didn't know that you were also involved in Project Fit Kid. That was kind of the way that you got into the whole thing. It's such a beautiful, like full circle.
Yeah. Right.
That's so amazing. Um, Thank you for that. And so, you know, with over the years of like your training, you've really come to understand like movement as a way as a means to enable like longevity. What are your steps for, or kind of the pillars that you think about when it's all about, you know, building that, I guess, utilizing movement for longevity and, you know, living a better, higher quality of life?
Yeah. So movement for longevity, there's a few things with that. And so like when I talk about movement for longevity, not only am I talking about using movement to create more longevity, but having longevity in your movement. So what I find or see a lot is like people, when not having properly programmed exercise, or just doing something random and not paying attention to intensity or anything like that, is you'll find that there's like a time cap on it. It's like doing something too repetitive or doing the same thing constantly can cause injury. And so what I've found is like trying to structure a way for people to have longevity, not only longevity in their life, but longevity in their movement, and be able to move properly and well for hopefully the rest of their life. And so that's probably the big one, is just you know, making sure you're having a few things. There's a few things in that. And so I would say the first one is I wouldn't put these in any order because they're all probably just as important. First one I would say is honestly intensity is what I would like to talk about, is because for one, if you're already really into exercise, I would say there's a few types of people within that. There's the type of person that compensates their nutrition by beating themselves up in the gym. And so they're not a type of person to stray away from intensity, but that always ends up in injury, whether it's now or later. doing that just causes a lot of strain on your nervous system and your body and your digestive system, and so many other things. And so intensity control is super important. And that I would say is like on a weekly basis, not on like a monthly basis. That's like, you know, having controlled intensity within your workouts is important, but not going maximal effort every time you're in the gym.
Can you give an example of what that would look like in terms of like how you would possibly like structure out a week of intensity?
Yeah, totally. I actually have it written down right here. Yeah, so Uh, to give an example, I'll do like Monday, like for example, for me, I'll do Monday like a moderate intensity. And so moderate just meaning like, I would say like if you're giving it a percentage, something around 75%. And then Tuesday, I'll increase the intensity a little bit. And so when I have controlled intensity, I would say like at the beginning stages of my programming, I'm not going anything more than like 85% of like maximal exertion as far as like my, intensity and energy. And then Wednesday, I'll take it back to like lower to moderate intensity. And then Thursday, I kind of have like what I call an active rest day. And so that's basically where I'm like doing a few very low intensity exercises that are like very easy to do, where I can like continuously move, I'm sweating, and really to get the blood flowing. And then that's Thursday, and that'll do for like an hour, as well as stretching. And then Friday will be a higher intensity day because Thursday was very low. And then Saturday will almost always just be like moderate. And then Sunday, complete rest. The only thing I'll be doing is walking. And the reason I structure and that changes. And so like when I have a higher intensity day, it'll start off at the beginning of my programming at 85%. And I would say maybe like once every 3 months or so, I'll probably dip into like the 90 to 95. And very, very rarely I'll ever try to like push that to like where I'm going 100%, trying to hit like a personal record on any lift or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And the reason for it is just so you don't tax your nervous system, and so you can continuously work out and have good energy throughout your day, and you're not getting injured, and better digestion as well.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that one, the better digestion, like how that intensity directly affects your digestion?
Yeah. So whenever you're working out, everything. So basically everything you do with your body, like there's a correlation. Everything like, is affected. Is affected. And so when you work out at a very high intensity, you're stressing your whole body. And so your body has to focus basically on trying to reduce that stress that you're putting on your body when at a very high like intensity level. And so then that energy is taken away from your stomach, and your stomach, takes about like 60% of, or not your stomach, but your whole digestive system takes about like 60% of all your energy just to digest throughout your day. And so like when you're trying to push your intensity, you're kind of dipping into that 60% that should go to your digestion. And so that can cause all sorts of things. I mean, digestive issues, like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's also right. You like if you're depending on the type of exercise too, you might be a little bit more in a sympathetic state, which is the taxing on your nervous system, which then means you're shunting all of your blood instead of your digestive tract into your muscles, which is what you need because you're pushing yourself really, really hard. So that makes perfect sense, like how, the amount or the intensity of the exercise really can affect your digestion. And so like I even have a patient right now who he is like he likes to rise, so he cycles literally like so many miles. I can't even, like miles that would be like, you ride that? Like I would be driving that amount of miles. Mm-hmm. And so, he's very used to that kind of intensity. And because of that, as repercussions, he's had a more strain on his nervous system and his digestive tract. So we're working on all of those things now, which means actually because we put so much more focus on his digestion, he's even noticed like, I need to pull back from the intensity of my workouts because it's just too much on his body. So, I think that's also important to listen to our body, our internal sensor that's saying like, maybe this is too much.
Totally. And then it's kind of like that mind muscle connection too, right? Where you're like, you have to put some focus in it to basically make it work better. And so like when you're putting so much focus into your body and moving is so important, but then, you know, you need to also give that same energy when you're eating or digesting.
Yeah, and I really like that, you know, you do a whole rest day, but you don't just call it like a rest day, you call it like an active rest day. Can you just talk a little bit more about the importance of why you do that and you actually put that into programs for your clients?
Yeah, so I have 2 days. So I have my Sunday. I call it a complete rest day. When I call it a complete rest day, I do always say like you're not just sitting on the couch, you're not just laying down, but you're going for a walk. I like to say like 60 minutes minimum of walking for that complete rest day, and that's really just to get the blood flowing. And so one thing I always like to talk about is like tissue perfusion, which is basically where you're trying to get the nutrients into your muscles so they can recover better. And so if you're just sitting down, the nutrients in your body is not getting flushed into the muscles that need to recover. And so we don't build muscle or build any sort of strength while we're in the gym. We build it when we're recovering. And so we put that stress on our body while we're in the gym. And then when we really build is when, you know, when you're resting and your body has the ability to like push nutrients into the muscle. And so if you're sitting down, then you're not getting as much blood flow and to the proper areas. And
Mhm.
so my Thursday, it's a little bit different. And so I would consider it like a very light workout, like light enough to where I could be done and be like, oh, I could probably go for another hour, but I'm not going to because it's my light day. And so
Are you working up a sweat on on that day?
yeah, on Thursday. And so that's like a big thing is that's what you're basically trying to go for, is you're going for a sweat. And so like when I program it for my clients, I'll write something out, and uh it could be like a variety of different aerobic things. Like it would be like a 15-minute run and a 15-minute bike and a 15-minute row. And then, you know, with some like isometric core work in between, like really light stuff. Nothing that'll like where you're having a struggle to push through it. And then at the bottom, I'll write a pace. I'll be like, set a pace that you can do for about 4 hours. Like if you had to do it for 4 hours, that's the pace that I want you to go. And so you're just moving to where like your body's getting a good sweat and you're getting some really light work in.
All right, I have a question for you, and we didn't talk about this, so you can totally be like, I can't answer that. Where does, like, because talking about sweating in particular, and you know, working up a sweat, my first thought is always like a sauna or you know something along those lines. Do you recommend those with your clients at all? And is that something that could be utilized as part of a rest day, in particular for like patients or clients who are just getting into activity and maybe need a little bit more something a little bit more passive?
Yeah, no, yeah, I actually do prescribe that. And so like sometimes if someone doesn't have access to a sauna or something, I'll be like, grab some Epsom salts and sit in a bath, close the shower curtain and sweat it out for like 20 minutes. And so yeah, so like the only thing with that is like usually if you're like in a sauna or Epsom salts, it's you can't really like maintain that for an hour. And
Yeah.
so you usually just want to do that for 20 minutes, and you could do that twice in that day. I've prescribed that before. And so yeah, like if you're not up to that level where you can continuously move for an hour and it's not super taxing on your body, then yeah, you still want to get that sweat in for that day. And so yeah, and so like for me, like if I can, I'll try to get 2 sweats in on my Thursday. And so like one of them will actually be like an Epsom salt bath or something along those lines.
Perfect. I literally like love Epsom salt baths like nobody's business. It's one of my favorite things because it's like a win-win-win. Like like seriously,
Yeah.
there's no losing in an Epsom salt soak. Well, only if it's like really hot already. Then you're like, uncomfortable. But for real, it's like, and guys, if you haven't done an Epsom salt soak, it's super easy. You just get your bathtub, hot enough water. Don't burn yourself, please. And at least 2 cups of Epsom salt per bathtub. And then like Ethan was saying, like you get in there and Epsom salt is actually magnesium sulfate. So you get some magnesium, which is really helpful for actual muscle recovery because you need magnesium in order to do the uncoupling process of the muscles. So like they get all tight and so they're stuck like this and you need magnesium in order to basically unhook them. So you'll actually absorb some of that through your muscles, through your skin. So great there. You're going to get a little bit of muscle relaxation. You get the heat, which also feels great on tight muscles. And then if you do it at night, then you're literally it's going to just be sedating because you can't do anything for like 20 minutes. So you're getting the self-care there. And then again, if you do it right before bed, then you're going to be all nice and relaxed. And then just like Ethan was saying, you close that shower curtain and like, bam, you're in your own little personal sauna and you'll start sweating. And then what I really love to do at the end of that is a cold water rinse. And you probably all think that I'm crazy. And the reason that it's so important is actually when you do, it's actually called contrast hydrotherapy or hydrotherapy, which just means we're playing with water to do certain things. And what the heat, right, causes massive vasodilation. So you're all red because all of your heat and all that's escaping through your skin. So you're flushed. And then the cold helps to drive all of that energy, all of that blood flow back to your core, which is where you want it when you're no longer like hot. And so that's actually for some folks, they'll walk out of the shower and then they're cold. That's because all of your heat is escaping through the surface. But you want to put that energy, all that blood flow back into your core, because then that's actually what's going to help you to maintain your heat and all of that and all the wonderful benefits that you just got from the Epsom salt soak. All right, that's my soapbox for Epsom salt soaks. Why everyone needs to be doing them. All right, and Ethan, so great. Thank you so much for sharing about the intensity, but I know you have other things that you'd like to focus on when it comes to movement for longevity. So can you tell us another one?
Yeah, so next one I'll talk about is variety. And so variety is something that I think it's important for so many reasons. One of the biggest ones is there's a few ways people get injured, right? And so one of the ways is they don't have proper built stabilizers and recruitment muscles. So when they get into a funky position, their body's not ready for it, and then usually it overloads the joint. Most injuries, it's always a joint, almost always. And so that's what I've found, at least. And so having variety in your movement patterns and strengthening those stabilizers is a big one. The other way people get injured, which is really common, is overloading a certain movement pattern. And so having one thing, what I've seen a lot is for example, for people who run a ton, is they're constantly doing the same motion every day or most days. And so that overloads, you're doing the same movement pattern, which overloads certain parts of your body and not being balanced in your movement. And so having variety in your movement, basically creating different types of movement patterns so your body doesn't get overloaded and so you're balanced. And then the other piece to having variety is it keeps it interesting. It's so often we find that we'll do the same workout or the same class or the same whatever it might be, and it's great at first, but after doing it for a while, years, it gets old. I mean, everything does. And so having variety in your movement just keeps it sustainable. And that's the third one too, is sustainability, is making sure you have you're exercising in a way that you can continuously do for the rest of your life, so it never gets boring. And so with variety, having said that, going back to variety, is one thing I always like to talk about is everyone if you ever look at like programs or exercise programs, there's, you know, everyone knows like squatting, benching, and everyone like kind of knows the muscle groups. I think it's super common if you're in the gym and you like have done any sort of exercise. A lot of people will talk about like grouping muscle groups, like doing like a chest triceps or a back biceps or like legs, you know, legs shoulders or legs core. And so what I like to do when I program is I program for movement variability and patterns, movement patterns. And so how I do that is how you're actually moving. So I don't actually group muscle groups together, but I group movement patterns together. And usually they're fairly opposite. Not entirely, but this is how I usually like to group my movement patterns together. Is I'll do like a vertical push. So just to like lay them all out, and then I'll tell you how I group them. To lay them all out, there's a vertical push. There's a horizontal push. So a vertical push would be something like a shoulder press. A horizontal push would be something like push-ups or bench press or chest press.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is same thing with pulling. There's a horizontal, or there's a vertical put or pull where you're pulling up, and then there's a horizontal pull where you're pulling in. And then there is squatting for your legs and hinging. And so squatting is going to be anything where your chest is staying upright, your hips are coming down, and usually it's going to be in a movement pattern like lunges. I would consider it like a squat. Just regular squats. There's front squats, there's back squats, there's split squats, there's all kinds of squats. And then hinging is one that I also like to talk about. Is hinging's anything where you're doing like kettlebell swings, you're doing kettlebell snatches, you're doing deadlifts, any kind of deadlifts, and basically anything hinging is, so like let's say your whole body's like this is your legs, this is your torso, this is your hinge, right? And so you're hinging at your hips, you're doing anything like Romanian deadlifts or kettlebell swings, and then and so those I would say like are your base as far as your movement patterns that you want to have variety of, and you want to hit all those in a week. And so how I like to group that is I'll go vertical push. I'll do like a vertical push and hinge day, like on Monday. And then I'll do a squat and pull day on Tuesday. And then Wednesday, I'll do like a horizontal push and core. And so in all three of those, I may implement core, but there's going to be a big core focus on my Wednesday. And then on Thursday is my active rest day, right? And then Friday will be a squat hinge day. And so this will be a big leg based day. There may also be core implemented in this as well, but the focus is going to be squatting and hinging. And then as well as a few other things, but I'll go into that later. And then Saturday it would be a push pull day. And so that could either be a vertical push, that could be a horizontal push. And same thing with pulling, it could be horizontal pulling or vertical pulling. And then Sunday is my rest day. And so that's kind of how I like to group my exercises together and program well. And that's basically just so your body doesn't get overloaded and you don't get burnt out. And so doing this properly and having controlled intensity and variety in your workouts will basically be the determining factor of if you're getting burnt out. And so that's why you want to have controlled intensity with this, because it's very easy to have you could have a squat hinge day where you're doing back squats and deadlifts, and then your nervous system is taxed for the rest of the week. And so it's really important to have variety. And so like the other piece to variety is doing like funky, I call them like funky movement patterns, like stuff you wouldn't really think of. And so, yeah, I mean, like to give you an example, just like a real simple one is everyone does push-ups like this, right? Both hands are nice and even. Some people have their elbows tucked, some have them out, right? So just next time you do push-ups, instead of doing them like this, do them like this. It's really weird, but it'll basically what it does also is like forces your muscles to work differently than they normally would. And so you actually get a better response from your body by doing that, because it's different. And so that's like another thing people talk about is muscle confusion. And so you're confusing your muscles. They don't know, they haven't worked this way. So they're having to basically grow in a different way because they're not used to this. So they have to adapt, and your body is super adaptive. And so the more you demand like that type of movement, the more it'll respond.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah. And then in the variety, there's a lot to talk about with variety. But like the other thing I would say is like, always go back to your base, you know, do a lot of stuff that challenges your stability. And the way to control your load may not just be, you know, controlling the weight, but one way to do it is controlling the tempo at which you move each reps. And so let's say you can squat 100 pounds on your back. Well, if you can squat 100 pounds on your back, how fast are you moving? Now, what I would say is like take the weight back like 20, 30 pounds, but move at like a 5 count down, a hold at the bottom, come up, 0 rest up top. So what that's called is time under tension. And so like putting tension on your body while you're in those movements will basically force you to take the load down, which will basically protect you even more, because then you're not overloading your body. And so you're increasing the stress by controlling the tempo. And what that also does is gives you better strength response.
And it's hard. Like, it's so hard when you're doing like slow down the tempo to like, oh, I feel like you're shaking. That's me anyways. I'm like, oh, this is so much harder than what it was before. So it's a great way. It's been a great tool for like home workouts, since I don't have like the whole like heavy weight set, and it's just a matter of changing the tempo to make it so it's like I can still get a good workout in, even though I don't have access to a full gym.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Great, that's so wonderful. Thank you so much. So much information. I just love it. Can you? I know with we had talked a little bit about like the fundamental, like those movement patterns. Do you have a resource that for folks who would like to have a video or demonstration of that available that you'd be able to give us, so I can post it on, send it out to all my peeps?
Yeah, I could. I can make one and share one. I would say another really good resource is a guy named Marcus Philly. He has like tons of great different movements that you can implement into your workouts, and he talks a lot about that as well. It's movement patterns. I'll also make a video to show you the different movement patterns as far as vertical pushing, vertical pushing, horizontal pushing. Same thing with pulling, vertical, horizontal, and then.
And if you had, say, a new client who like they're just starting out, how would you get them set up? I know it's a very different situation with you being, face to face or virtual computer to computer with individuals. It's a very different experience than just, the ethers. But how or where would you tell folks to, if they're not in really good shape, but they want to start taking control of that, where or how should they start? How and where?
Yeah. So I would say you can start with just your body weight. There's a million plus things you can do with just your body weight to make it more challenging or even to make it easier. The more tools you have, that's just the same thing. You're just increasing the variety. So I would say the more tools you have, the better. If you have anything at home, that's great. If not, I know a few gyms that are open, but other than that, doing, starting at home is like more than fine. I would say like, you should start at home. Honestly, like if you don't have if you don't have a gym membership and you're just getting into it, start with your body weight. Cause I mean, you can do a 15-minute workout and, get a ton out of it, especially if you haven't done anything yet. Your body will respond and adapt very well.
And so like I often recommend like the 7-minute workout as a starting place. I know that for some folks it's a little too intense to go straight into that. But as a base, like, do you think that's a good starting place for folks if they're like, I just don't know what to do and I need a little bit more guidance? Or do you have another resource that might be easier, more helpful for some folks?
Like as far as doing like 7-minute,
I more so just because I know with the 7-minute workout, it's like high intensity and maybe you don't necessarily want to get into that. But more so just for some sort of framework for people to start with if they have no idea, like, they have the basic movements, but they don't know how to like put them all together to create a workout. So there's like templates or something available that might be a good resource.
I'll create a template. And one thing I would like to say too is like, as far as the 7-minute workout, I'm not sure what specific one you're referring to, but always start low intensity. Like your intensity should not be high when you're starting. It's like doing something where you're getting your body moving. The most important thing is that you're just implementing new movement to your day. And so if you're not used to doing any sort of I don't know, squatting, pushing, and even if you're at home, you can do vertical pushing without any weight or any weight bearing. You don't need to bear any weight to do that. It can literally just be you creating tension in your shoulders and pretending like you're pushing up. And so just by doing that, you're getting new movement patterns in. And trust me, like if you've never done that before and you're not used to exercising, just creating tension in your muscle and pressing up, you'll get sore. Like it's
Yeah, I've noticed that especially with like the rotator cuff muscles, so right in the back, because everyone's shoulder blades are just like this, right? They're all we're all like this now on the computer, as I'm in front of a computer, and right, so then all these pec muscles get all tight, stretching out the back muscles, and then you can, and one that can be a cause of pain for sure, but just opening back and down, like doing that like stretch and activating those muscles, it has been like when I started doing that, I was like, oh man, that's tender. Do holding that.
right.
So absolutely, just like under tension, or just doing the basic movements, because like even especially with the rotator cuff muscles, like for mine are just like they're just weak. So like even just doing like this, a little bit is like, okay, I'm done now. I'm tired.
Yeah, totally. There, and it's fun. It's funny you say that too, because like even for me with my programming, I'll have people that go to a gym and I'll program what I call there's this movement called cars, and it's basically where you like have your hands out like this, and you're just rotating your shoulders, and so it's opening up your scapula and moving it in a way that you wouldn't normally, and so it's getting like that movement in your scapula that you don't normally do, and so I'll put that into their program, even if they're a very high level athlete, because it's important to always go back to your base.
Yeah, and I bet folks have so much like adhesions, like scar tissue and like just stuckness all up in that scapula, just because I don't think we really use them that much, other than for them to be like this.
Yeah.
Which, it's not the best thing for us, which is
Yeah.
why, people come and they have pain. But thanks for bringing that up, because I think that is really important about having, starting out really low intensity when you're first starting, because it's all about injury prevention. Personally, like that's my biggest thing is when folks get moving, it's so important to not hurt yourself so that you don't, so that it's sustainable, right? Because if you injure yourself, then you're like, then you just go back down, you're going down like 2-3 steps or whatever. and then you got to make that progress again. But now there's this fear, because even with our body, we can hold some of that tension, and I'm like, oh, but I hurt myself last time. And then your muscles will actually protect yourself. And then you can't move naturally, which I think is really the benefit of having personal training, especially if you're doing more like the strength training, because you need like an expert to watch yourself, watch your movement, and make sure that you're moving properly, so you're not causing those issues. Because it's all about, even with body weight, you can totally injure yourself. Like I've done that.
Totally.
And I'm like, I don't like being injured, because you just don't feel great.
Yeah.
You're like, no one feels great when they're injured.
Yeah.
And then, it's the whole recovery process and all of that. So I'm like, yeah, just don't get injured. Easier said than done, I think. But I'm sure you got so many tricks and tips for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thank you again for, being so willing to make a template and some videos so that folks can have a starting place. Because I really think that is where the money's at. Like just having folks access to knowing how to get started, because it's, anytime we have a new project or anything, it's always getting started that's the hardest, right? Because we're at rest, literally at rest. And if you think about physics, right, it's so hard to get going, but once you actually start moving, it's actually harder to stop than it is to get, to keep going.
Catch that momentum.
Exactly. Perfect. Oh my, okay. And I think that was all the main questions I had. So we'll go ahead and open it up to questions at this time. If anyone has questions, hop on and ask away, because Ethan's here and has, ready to answer all your other questions, because he's answered mine. Let's see, anyone got questions? Or if you have any other things you'd like to say, Ethan, feel free to, or any last, main takeaways that you would like to tell, my patients. And we did get a question here. If someone has, bad wrists and ankles, those joints in particular, what would be some good exercises to do?
Yeah. So I would say depending on like how bad is one thing. If it's so bad you don't want to put any sort of pressure or tension on it, then I would say you want to do more exercises on your back. So stuff where you're doing like hollow body holds or core exercises. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And then would you also then incorporate like flexibility movements or something along those lines to help strengthen the joints?
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess my concern is like, if I don't know like how bad the pain is, I'd just be a little cautious about where, like how much pressure you're putting on that joint. But yeah, so once the joint is healed to a point where like you can put pressure, you want to do a lot of stability work, especially on the ankle. On the wrists, you're looking at a lot more stretching and doing like flexion work. So where you're like, your hands are on the ground, but your full pressure isn't on it. You're just basically like moving past that point on the ground. And then with your ankle, you want to do a lot more stability work. So that doesn't even have to be stuff like on a BOSU or anything like that. You could just be doing a lot of single leg work where you're having to balance, and then stay by like a wall or something where you can grab.
I noticed when I started doing like the single leg like deadlifts more, like one leg has really good stability, but is not as strong, and then the other leg's got the stability, but just it's like one or the other. I'm like, great now. Yeah. And that's the great thing about training one leg at a time, where you can actually tease those out and make them more even.
And I would say it's the same with arms too. So, if you're doing sort of a chest press or a vertical press, change it up, do it with one arm,
And then we got another question here too. What daily work, like gardening, et cetera, can we sub for workout options? This particular individual is over 50 and not really into the gym or serious workout plan, but knows that you want to exercise a little bit more than just walking the dog.
Yeah. So daily work. I would say the thing with like doing something like that, I would say just like change it up. So don't do the same thing every time. If you're always gardening, if you notice that you move a certain way, I'd say like one thing that'll help is just be attentive to how you're moving in a given day. And so if like I know you gave the example of gardening. So gardening is great, and I would just say mix it up. And so and even adding as far as daily work, it's a little bit difficult just because there's only so much you can do. I would say just like even if you just pick a few movements that you can do and just take like block out like 15 minutes or something where it's like super light. But I would just say biggest thing is have variety. So if you're always gardening, then do something else the next day. Maybe I don't know if you have like even honestly even like cleaning your house, like that can be enough sometimes.
Yeah. Done some heavy duty cleaning and it's just like, oh man, I'm sore now. Great. Other questions for Ethan and I? Leave that open for a little bit longer. I know like for me, what I even ended up doing, especially in the beginning was, so I have an English bulldog and she's like 35-ish pounds. I just carry her and then do squats. I was like, all right, this is getting some workout in. And I think that also plays into like some daily work that you might be doing depending on the size of the dog and your strength and everything. It's like using those things as, and making sure that you actually have good form. Because I think that is where people will end up getting injured, is like they're lifting something because it is like part of their daily life or their daily work that they have to do. And then, right, they compensate poorly. And so then I think it really just comes down to practicing, like what you were saying, is doing those fundamental movements.
Mm-hmm. And being able to learn how to move properly is a huge one. So with all those things I said, like as far as movement patterns, you can always like look up videos and then try to like mirror, film yourself and then like watch the video. And then, yeah.
I also I learn a little bit that way. So like I'll watch, but then it still has been so invaluable for me personally to just have a trainer there to, at the moment that I'm doing it, correct me so that it doesn't get locked into my mind and my body as a different way to, like I don't want that muscle memory. I want the right muscle memory.
Yep, exactly. And one thing I always like to talk about too is like even coaches need coaches, So like for example, for programming, if you talk to any trainer who's probably been doing it for a while, it's like no one programs their own workouts, and there's a reason for it. And so like one of the reasons is so we make sure we have variety, because as much as we don't want to think so, ego does get involved. And so the workout's either too difficult or we're just not feeling it that day and it's too easy.
Yeah.
Than it should be.
That's so true. I think that's probably true in all fields. Cause like even for, as like me and my like physicians and my colleagues, we're like, it's so challenging to give your own medicine because you only know so much. So it's really helpful to have an outside party, right, tell you like, no, I can see where your weaknesses are, because me personally, I can't see it because I only see what I see. And I think that's where coaches are so invaluable to, with training, with health, with like, for me, like also growing my business, I have coaches because want to learn from the best, right? And that's how we do it, is by coaching.
Yeah.
So with that, I would love to have, like, how can, if folks want to reach out to you, have questions, or would like to maybe set up a initial like consult with you or discovery call, how can they do that?
Yeah. So easiest way is you can email me, reach out to me at ethan@rdfit.com. Or I always, you can give me a call as well if you want to book something. I do free consultations, just laying it, if you just want to kind of get a scope of like what your health should be like, and like maybe like, I don't know, how to implement some more movement into your daily routine.
Mm-hmm.
I do free consultations, so that's a good resource. And then my number is 818-540-8081. That's a good way to reach me.
Great. And I'll put all that in for all your contact information too in the next couple of emails for folks, so they can reach out to you personally as well. They have that. And then, was I going to say anything else? No, I think that's about it. So if no one else has any other questions, we'll go ahead and let you all go. Rob did say though that he was really thankful for like the tips, and he really likes the idea of modifying the workout. So this, like the staggered push-up. So thanks for that, for sharing. And it's been an absolute pleasure, Ethan, having you on today. Thank you so much for your time. Greatly appreciate it. And then looking forward to what you whip up for, the videos and the little template starting base, because I think that's so incredibly important just for folks to have some sort of framework to kind of move to just start. Right, because it's just about getting started, and then always being able to, reach out to you for more of that personalization. So thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.